Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 181-200. Chapter 181. Overthrow the world with me. The existence of a world government is the very essence of world stability and order. Haven't Your Excellency ever thought about how serious the consequences will be once it is fundamentally resolved? Anything needs to be eliminated step by step, and of course it cannot be done all at once. Yagami Kingdo said lightly. Hearing Yagami Sudo's words, Fujitora was silent for a while. As Yagami Kanto said, he can't turn a blind eye to everything in this world, and he has ambitions and beliefs. But he alone cannot change the world, so he needs to choose a path. Pirates are impossible because pirates are the source of chaos. Besides pirates, there are only two options left: the Revolutionary Army and the world government. The Revolutionary Army tried to overthrow the world government, but their actions started with spreading ideas and instigating rebellion. Indeed, as its name suggests, it is launching a revolution that spreads all over the world. There is no doubt that revolutions require bloodshed and sacrifice. Under the normal historical process, Fujitora finally chose the world government and the navy amid the hesitation between the Revolutionary Army and the world government. And now, the choice in front of him is one more, and that is the alternative Iori pirates. Although it is named as a pirate, it never robs civilians, nor does it wantonly slaughter, but only exposes the darkness of this world. He also understood what Yagami Kingdo had said before, and he had already directly told him the next purpose of the Yagami pirates. Eliminate the four emperors. After that, then swing the knife to the world government and rebuild a new order. The current Yagami Kingdo is not some unknown person, but the 5 emperors who rule the sea. With such an identity, being able to say so much to such a nobody like him is self-evident that he attaches great importance to him. Man with a clear mind and arrogance. Why not join the navy from now on? On the one hand, he hasn't made a choice yet. One hand, he did not like to start as a pawn. Therefore, they will directly show their shocking strength in the recruitment of the world. Let the world government make an exception and become an admiral in one step. During the communication between Yagami Aoto and Fujitora, more than a dozen murderers beside him were all terrified. He didn't dare to move, and he didn't dare to say a word. Among them, there are people with good brains, who can guess something based on the words of Yagami Kanto. But he didn't dare to think about it at all. Some people want to cry. Finally locked a fat sheep and planned to make some money to spend money. How could I be involved in the vortex of the 5 emperors? But with my current strength, it's still a bit reluctant to take a step, and I need your participation. Yagami Aoto looked at Fujitora and officially issued an invitation. Fujitora was silent for a few seconds, and finally said, I am just a nameless person who doesn't see anything. I really don't deserve your respect. Yagami Kingdo's expression did not change. For Fujitora's reaction, he had expected it, and said calmly, I trust my vision. Besides. Speaking of which. He paused for a moment and sent a sentence to Fujitora's ear. Really? Fujitora's face changed. Yagami Aoto smiled slightly, but did not respond, just looked at Fujitora. Fujitora's face became cloudy for a while, and the hand holding the wooden staff became a lot tighter, and he didn't speak for a while. That's it. Yagami Aoto looked at the silent Fujitora, waited quietly for a while, and said, You like gambling, so let's gamble again. I don't know what you think. Fujitora's face was low, and he didn't know how many thoughts were surging in his heart. In the end, he wiped out all distracting thoughts and nodded earnestly at Yagami Kingdo. Be your own compliment. Iori Kingdo rubbed his chin, thought for a moment, and said, How do you like to gamble? Since it's your invitation, it's up to you to decide how to gamble freely. Fujitora responded. Yagami Kingdo stretched out his hand and felt in his pocket, and finally took out a coin. Staring at the coin for 2 glances, Iori Kingdo said, I don't play much, and I don't understand complicated things at all. The simplest one, what do you think? Fujitora nodded and said, it's perfect. Iori Kangdu smiled, put the coin between his fingers, made a pop-up shape, and said, one side. Word, one side. Flower, which side do you bet on? Word. Fujitora didn't think much of it. Eight God Kangdu said softly, then I am a flower. Ding. The moment the voice fell, he gently flicked his thumb on the middle of his index finger. The coin swirled and flew into the sky in an instant, and after reaching the highest point, it fell to the ground below. Yagami Sudo and Fujitora are both domineering, while capturing the movement of the coin. It looks like a simple bet, but in the hands of the two of them, it is naturally impossible to be so simple. The moment it popped up, the two already knew the answer. Since it is the coin of Yagami Kangduden, it must be controlling the falling of the flower face. Fujitora's expression did not change, he held a wooden staff and suddenly shot. A strange force suddenly aroused, and instantly enveloped the coin, causing the coin's movement trajectory to change. Yashin Kangdu's expression remained the same, he flicked his fingers, and a wisp of finger wind blew out. When it bounces on the coin, the speed of the falling coin's rotation increases instantly. Fujitora's eyes with only the whites of his eyes opened slightly, and he slowly brought the wooden staff in front of him. Gravity suddenly intensified, pressing heavily on the coin, and the coin fell rapidly. Yagami Aoto's eyes flickered, and in the turbulent power, he used the technique of light and heavy rocks to destroy the gravity released by Fujitora. The fall of the coin suddenly stagnated and bounced back to the sky. The two released gravity one by one, and the other released the technique of light and heavy rock, and collided with each other on this street. Kacha. I don't know since when, the ground between Yagami Soto and Fujitora began to shatter. At a speed visible to the naked eye, it cracked like a spider web, spreading inch by inch in all directions. This is... Under the confrontation, Yagami Sudo and Fujitora's spirit naturally revealed, colliding in the void. More than a dozen murderers in the vicinity all stood up. Looking at the cracked ground inch by inch, everyone's heart jumped violently, revealing the color of fear. Even if the ground cracking is not spreading fast, it doesn't look like there is a huge collision. But in their hearts, they all felt a creepy horror. Once you are involved in it, you will be smashed to pieces. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 182, Shiryu of the Rain vs. Fujitora Smile. Escape. Run away. Finally someone responded. Under the crisis of life and death, he broke free from the oppression brought by Yagami Kanto. Forcibly moved his legs and fled far away. However, at the moment when they all fled, the 8 gods Kangdu in the field raised his hand with flat eyes. A total of ashes swept past, as if silent. Those murderers' bodies were touched and completely shattered in an instant, and they couldn't even let out a scream. Bang! After doing all this, Yagami Kangdu was covered in blue steam, and his aura exploded suddenly. Fujitora's body swayed, and the clogs continuously slipped on the ground for nearly 2 meters before they stopped. The coin finally fell from the sky, landed on the ground, rolled twice and then stopped. The upward side is engraved with lifelike petals. Fujitora slowly stood up straight. Yagami Aoto stood there, looked at Fujitora calmly, and smiled slightly. Assignment. Fujitora walked towards Yagami Kangdu, and while passing by Yagami Kangta, he paused for a moment, and said, you can take care of your face in the future. Without a doubt. In terms of strength, Yagami Kangdu is stronger than him. Strength is stronger than him, the will shakes him, the argument makes him agree, and Fujitora has no reason to refuse. Besides, this last bet was indeed lost. Stuffed up. Yagami Kangdu smiled softly. Coast. The ship of the Yagami pirates is docked here. Aoto Yagami, Fujitora, Shiryu of the Rain, and Nina 4 came from a distance. All the way to the shore, Helding and others gathered on the deck early, and their eyes were all focused on Fujitora. The aura revealed by the strong is obviously different from that of ordinary people, and Shiryu of Rain can roughly judge that Fujitora has considerable strength. But to what extent, he did not. It seems to have some skill. After all, it's the captain's fancy. Statham shrugged, the person Kangdo liked couldn't be too bad. Walking along the gangway to the deck, Yagami Soto stretched out his hand towards Nina at the back. Nina handed over her small hand and walked onto the deck holding Yagami Soto's hand. Shiryu of Rain was the third, and Fujitora was the last. Yagami Kanto smiled and introduced Hyerding and others to Fujitora. I've admired your great names for a long time. After the introduction by Yagami Soto, Fujitora gave Shiryu of Rain and the others a slightly honest smile. Smiles seemed harmless to humans and animals, and he said, I am deeply ashamed to be so valued by Mr. Yagami Kangdo in the next nameless generation. Please bear with me in the future. Too modest. Hyerding said to Fujitora, to be so valued by the captain, he must have extraordinary skills. Gales tilted his head to look at Fujitora, and said, since we are on the same boat, we should get to know each other more. I don't know what your abilities are. Hee hee, a little trick of carving insects, it's not enough. Fujitora touched the back of his head and smiled, like a harmless middle-aged uncle. Shiryu of the Rain came forward with a cigar in his mouth, and the second-generation Itoru was held in front of him and placed horizontally, looking at Fujitora and said, I have nothing to do, and my hands are itchy, let's talk about it. Although Fujitora came later, his position on the ship could not have been suspended in midair, and after all, he had to fall where he should have fallen. And on this ship, in addition to the order of getting on the ship, the distinction of status must be determined by strength. Even the strength of strength is more decisive than the order of boarding. After all, this is a world where the weak eat the strong. Yagami Aoto did not stop him. On this ship, it is normal to delineate status by strength. Except, Sugar with special abilities and Gels are not restricted, and Nina has a special status, the others are roughly arranged in this way. In fact, Yagami Sudo was planning to give Fujitora the position of vice captain. However, Fujitora had just boarded the ship, and even if he was stronger than Shiryu of the Rain and the others, he wouldn't have made such a big leap in one step. And whether the post of deputy captain should be given out or not is still up for debate for Yagami Kanto. Unlike other cadres, the deputy captain has powers higher than other cadres. When the captain is away, he has the right to command the entire pirate group. Fujitora's personality is at ease, but this position is very important. Facing Shiryu of Rain's outspoken challenge, Fujitora paused for a moment and said slowly, since your excellency has Yaxing, you should let your excellency have fun. This is not the place to start, let's start the boat first. Shiryu of the Rain grinned slightly, but didn't make a move. Putting the second-generation Onito back on his waist, he looked at the Yagami Soto and Shiryu of the Rain not far away. Yagami Kanto nodded and led Nina into the cabin. The ship quickly set sail, left the island, and came to a gentle sea. Shiryu of the Rain looked at the place, his eyes flickered slightly, and he jumped to the sea. Yagami Kangdo flicked his fingers and froze the sea in a large area. This is of course not the ability of the superhuman fruit, but a battlefield formed by ninjutsu for a short time. Power is average, and it is considered a kind of the limit of blood, and it is definitely different from the ability of the green pheasant. However, it is enough to build a temporary battlefield. Chapter 183. Fierce Battle, Meteorites Fall from the Sky. Shiryu of Rain's body was instantly covered with crimson flames, and the moment he stepped on the seawater evaporated and spread in all directions to the west. In fact, under the development of Shiryu of the Rain, he has gradually touched the core of the hot fruit. That is to exchange extreme heat for extremely high attack at close range. Condensing flames on the sword chi is a long-range attack method. In fact, the flame contained in the sword chi is not strong. But when the hot fruit is fully stimulated to the extreme, his body and his blade will have extreme temperature. When fighting with the enemy in melee combat, the enemy will be greatly affected. Just imagine two swordsmen fighting in close combat. As the blades keep colliding, one's blade suddenly condenses hundreds of thousands of degrees, or even higher temperatures. Influence is obvious. Great. Fujitora stood on the edge of the deck, lowered his head, and noticed that the sea was boiling, but it did not destroy the ice layer constructed by Yagami Soto, so he could not help but speak slowly. Then, it also fell to the ice surface below. Shiryu of the Rain drank a cigar, drew his sword, and half of his body was covered in flames. Now he is very good at controlling the hot fruit, and he will not burn the cigars in an instant like before. Guilty. Compared to Shiryu of the Rain, Fujitora's expression was always very calm, without showing any momentum. While he opened his mouth slowly, he leaned forward and held the handle of the wooden staff. The cane sword was suddenly pulled out, and waved towards the sky. A strange force suddenly shot out, suddenly traversing the sky, and disappeared in the blue sky. Nina, Helding and the others were all staring at Fujitora, and when they noticed Fujitora's movements, they couldn't help but look up at the sky, revealing a bit of a strange color. They could sense that Fujitora had sent some kind of power into the sky, but they didn't know what Fujitora's purpose was. Shiryu of the Rain also looked up at the sky, and there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. But soon, the doubt in his eyes turned to surprise. I saw that above the blue sky, a little red spark suddenly appeared. From the sky that I don't know how far away, it fell toward the field. Meteorite. Shiryu of the Rain's complexion changed. Helding and the others also showed a hint of shock. Needless to say, the power of this meteorite, and the unknown sky pulled down a one meteorite, this power is too much of a joke. Hot sword. Looking at the falling meteorite, Shiryu of Rain took a deep breath, not daring to be careless. The ability of the hot fruit is stimulated, and a sword is suddenly thrown out. The falling meteorite was split in half from the center by the sword of Shiryu the Rain. However, the falling trend of the meteorite that was cut in half has not diminished, and it is still smashing down like a devastated, blasting ice layer. Sword net. Shiryu of the Rain's eyes were cold and he slashed out several swords again. The sword chi intertwined and turned into a big net, tearing the meteorite into countless pieces. At the same time, Fujitora, who was opposite him, also swung a sword. A surging pressure slammed into the other half of the meteorite, and after a stalemate for a second, the half of the meteorite was blasted apart. Boom! The shattered meteorite finally fell to the ice surface, causing a violent roar that shattered the ice surface that was not deep enough to freeze. Countless ice cubes splashed around and hit the hull. Yagami Kangdu raised his hand gently, and more than a dozen flamboyant fireballs suddenly appeared, offsetting the scattered ice crystal debris. Waiting for the ice cubes to be broken and scattered to dissipate. I saw Shiryu of the Rain hovering in the air on a moon step, looking at Fujitora solemnly. Fujitora was stepping on a circular ice block, also suspended in midair. I underestimate you. Shiryu of the Rain spoke slowly and said, even if there are people with healthy eyes, few can have the strength of you. The little trick of carving insects is not worth mentioning, and it will make your excellency laugh. Fujitora smiled faintly, and he also judged the approximate strength range of Shiryu Rain. Of course, to determine Shiryu of the Rain's strength, a test alone is not enough. Shiryu of Rain also only knew that Fujitora was strong, but he didn't know how strong. After he sank his face slightly, he rushed towards Fujitora with a moon step. Extremely hot blade. The extremely hot sword with a high temperature of 1200 degrees slashed towards Fujitora. Fujitora's expression remained unchanged, and he waved the sword in his hand. Gravity condensed on the blade and released it towards Shiryu of the Rain who was charging. Gravity knife. Boom. Compared with the tentative move just now, this move is a pure frontal attack. The swordsmanship of Shiryu of the Rain, combined with the extreme heat of the hot fruit, coupled with the domineering armed color, erupted with the power to control the heat with a sword and sever everything. Fujitora is pure gravity condensed together, forming a high-intensity weight. Kacha, kacha, the broken ice surface below shattered again in the aftermath. Terrifying aftermath swayed in the sky, sweeping in all directions. Yagami Kangdu once again stimulated the arrogant fireball, blocking the aftermath that swept over. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 184, The Tea Party, The Tranquility Before the Storm. When the aftermath dissipated, the figures of Fujitora and Shiryu of Rain were revealed. I saw Fujitora's face was calm, and neither the blade nor the clothes were damaged. In front of him, Shiryu of the Rain had wrinkles on his clothes, which was obviously inferior. Shiryu of the Rain stared at Fujitora. It was beyond his expectation that Fujitora's strength could reach this level. If he has a higher level of retina fruits mastery, it would be able to compete with Fujitora. Now, if it is a life and death struggle, his chances of winning are very low. That's it. Let's go. Yagami Sudo stood on the deck, looking at Shiryu of Rain and Fujitora in the sky. Shiryu of Rain, who did not get the hot fruit, is still a little short of the strength of the general. But after getting the hot fruit, although his strength will not skyrocket to become a general, but it is also infinitely close to the general level. If Shiryu of Rain is stronger, the competition with Fujitora can continue to compete. But now, everyone knows the difference in strength. Great. Helding muttered. He originally thought that Fujitora's strength would be similar to him, at most. Shiryu of Rain's current level, but he didn't expect it to be even stronger than Shiryu of Rain. Compared with the Admiral of the Navy, this strength is absolutely comparable, and even defeating the Admiral of the Navy may not be impossible. Without a doubt. On this ship, only Yagami Sudo can beat Fujitora. After Shiryu of Rain gave Fujitora a look, he snorted softly and fell to the deck below. He wouldn't be very happy about. Fujitora's strength is stronger than him. Fujitora's attitude was calm. He put the stick knife into the wooden stick, and then fell back to the deck. Let's set sail, let's go back to the New World. Yagami Aodu spoke in a calm tone, and glanced at Fujitora at the same time. Immediately afterwards, he left the deck and walked into the cabin at the rear. Fujitora understood, and the wooden staff in his hand lightly touched the deck. Gravity excited, frozen in the ice, the ship suddenly roared and broke free from the ice. Leaping into the air, and under Fujitora's control, it flew into the distance. Before, there was only one person who could fly with a boat, but now with Fujitora, Yagami Sudo, as the captain, will naturally not do this kind of hard work anymore. The news about the appearance of the 8 Gods pirates in the first half of the Great Route was also learned by the world government and the Navy. But this time, both the Navy and the world government remain silent. It's just being alert, and superficial work that may be dispatched at any time. 5 Emperor pirates roaming the sea is too expensive to deal with. And Yagami Kangdu's ability is extremely special. In the face of the 4 top fighting forces who can retreat calmly, I am afraid that the most difficult pirate group to destroy is the 8 Gods pirates. Sailing all the way to the Chambord Islands, Yagami Kangdu specially sank the ship into the sea, and turned around again to Fishman Island. I saw the white star who has grown up, but it will take a few more years before the trampoline takes shape. From the New World to the first half, and then back to the New World. It took nearly 4 months. During these 4 months, the New World was calm. Each of the 4 emperors stayed in their own territory, and there was no conflict or even friction between them. But everyone knows that this calm sea is just a sight on the sea. In that deep seabed, there are already undercurrents. The 8 Gods pirates, who have the title of the 5th emperor, have not yet belonged to their territory. A 5 emperor with power but no territory is contrary to common sense. And the behavior of the 8 Gods pirates along the way, obviously has nothing to do with the so-called security, that is to say, the so-called calm in the past few months is just brewing a huge storm that will sweep the entire sea. Kaido. Still anti. There are forces who are guessing where the next point of conflict for the 8 Gods Pirates will be. By the 4 Emperors. If the 8 Gods Pirates want to obtain the status that belongs to the 5 Emperors, it is bound to do something to the original 4 Emperors. The previous conflict with the Beast Pirates can be said to be just a starting point. However, it is not so easy to take away their territory from the hands of any of the 4 Emperors. They ruled the New World, and even the world government and the navy could not help them. Even though the sea was calm for several months, the Yagami pirates never faded out of anyone's sight. The first thing that countless people pick up the newspaper every day is to find out if there is any news about the Yagami pirates. And just in this world, it gives people a feeling that the storm is about to come. One of the 5 emperors sent out an invitation that caused many headaches. The 4 emperors, Charlotte Lingling's tea party. There are countless terrifying things in the New World, in addition to the weather is far more bizarre and bad than the first half. There is also the 4 emperors that must not be provoked, Kaido. And the invitation letter that must not be rejected, the tea party. No one dares to ignore the tea party. Those who once received invitations but ignored them are now buried in history, and few people even remember their names. Chapter 185. Overcast Clouds, the Beginning of Turmoil. The tea party has it started again. The leader of a certain underground force rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. Get an invitation, you have to go. If you go, you must bring a treasure chest with you. The gift in the treasure chest is a very troublesome thing. Putting it badly is naturally courting death, but putting it too precious and distressing. When was the first tea party? The president of the great news agency, Morgan's, was drinking tea with a thoughtful look, and said, "This is the first time for a tea party." He looked up at the cloudy sky. Before you know it, the sea has been ruled by the 4 emperors for many years. No, it's already 5 emperors now. However, this situation will not last forever. This tea party, it's hard to say how many times it can be held again. Morgan's murmured in the bottom of his heart. He held the invitation letter and returned to the room. Fishman Island. Who was playing with Shirahoshi, received information from Nina about the situation of the thieves reported by Kaku and others. Tea party. Yagami Kangdu, who was sitting on the shoulders of Shirahoshi, had a strange look in his eyes. Baishing is very big, but he is also the only person in this world who can compete with the Empress on the basis of beauty alone. Of course. Empress and Baishing have completely different temperaments, and the gap is huge. Who? Baishing was lying on the beach at the moment, a small hand resting on his chin. Was a curious look on her little face. She didn't know anything about the 4 emperors and the like. Nina smiled at Baishing and said, "A very scary woman, and the enemy we will deal with next." It's very scary. Baishing listened to Nina's description, was a little scared, and said timidly. God Kangdu smiled and said, "Don't listen to her nonsense, it's not that scary, just an old woman." Is it? Shirahoshi still trusts Yagami Kanto, but she does the same to Nina. Therefore, the fear subsided a little, but still a little pitiful, said, "But why should you deal with her?" "Because she did something hateful to Helding and them." Hedon smiled at Baishing, and said, "Helding's hometown has been destroyed." Helding and others were also on Fishman Island, but Baishing had met once. Because Hyerding and other giants are very large, her impression is very deep. It's too much. Hearing Yagami Kangdu's words, Baishing spoke in a low voice. Although the words expressed dissatisfaction, the tone was timid and weak, and there was no trace of anger and other emotions. Baishing, the mermaid princess, doesn't seem to be born with the emotion of anger. It's getting late, you should go back to rest. Yagami Kangdu floated up from Baishing's shoulders and smiled at her Zaihei. Baishing nodded obediently. After letting Shirahoshi go back, Yagami Kangdu fell beside Nina, strolled through the gardens of Ryugu Castle, and said, "I plan to designate Fishman Island as my territory, but this matter will kill the thief." Afterwards, Fishman Island now carries the banner of the Whitebeard Pirates. Want to replace this flag? There is no doubt that you have to fight with the Whitebeard Pirates. In that case, the 4 emperors will be beaten all over, hee. Nina was next to Yagami Kangdu. She had already adapted to the words of Yagami Kangdu that revealed enough to shake the ocean from the outside world. If one day Yagami Kangdu doesn't do anything, she will feel unreasonable. After Nina laughed, she turned to ask, "Thief, what are you going to do?" "Just this tea party." 8-God Kangdu smiled slightly, and a deep light flashed in his eyes, and said, "Although I didn't receive an invitation letter, I think they will welcome it." "Good or bad?" Nina chuckled, "But I really like it." Yagami Soto picked a 1 gem from the coral next to it, and checked it a few times on Nina. Realizing that no matter how you do it, it's not as good looking as Nina's natural appearance, so she put the gem back again. Fishman Island Beach. 2 ships of the Iori pirates are docked here. In the central hull of one of the ships, there are 2 sofas, a few wooden chairs, and a huge round table and coffee table. The structure is extremely simple, but because it is a giant ship, the sofa is large. Chair is a specially made small chair. As for the round table, it is also very large, and the coffee table is a special small coffee table. It looks kind of funny. At this moment, on the wooden coffee table, reward orders were placed horizontally, and daggers were nailed to the coffee table. There are a lot of bounty orders below, and there are other information. These bounties come from thieves. All the pirates whose bounty is higher than 100 million Bailey, the information is scattered, the introduction of their abilities. Some of these materials were supplemented by Yagami Soto. Phailu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 186. Know yourself and the enemy, and you will not be imperiled in 100 battles. It's called a steel balloon, and all those born are crooked melons and cracked dates. Shiryu of the Rain was holding a cigar, and his eyes swept lightly over the reward orders. "In fact, you are also crooked." Yagami Kangdu didn't say those words. He flipped through the reward order, searched for the pictures in his memory, and briefly supplemented his impressions with a pen. There are not many people who can impress Yagami Soto. In addition to General Star, there are only Pelisparrow and Owen, the pirates with a bounty of 4 or 5, 100 million. In addition to many bounty orders. In the center of the coffee table, there is also a photo. The person in the photo is different from the other bounty orders, and it is the only person who can see it, Charlotte Breen. She didn't offer a reward, but because of the particularity of the memory fruit, Yagami Kangdu got a photo and marked it. That's about it. Yagami Kangdu briefly commented on the last document, sat up straight, and signaled that Shiryu of Rain and the others could view and memorize at will. Being able to know your opponent's abilities in advance is undoubtedly an advantage. Although with Fujitora, the 8 Gods pirates already have the ability to destroy thieves. However, in order to avoid unnecessary casualties and minimize their own casualties, various details of Yagami Kangdu will not be missing. Fujitora didn't look at anything and sat there silently. Between the 8 Gods pirates and other pirates is clearly reflected from here. Unlike other pirate groups, there is no order at all. Going up is messing around, but it has a meticulous intelligence chain. Pirates are chaotic, but the Yagami pirates are orderly. From this point of view, it doesn't even look like a pirate group, but like a regular army. General Star Katakuri, can seeing and hearing predict the future? Shiryu of the Rain stared at Katakuri's reward order and the information marked, and narrowed his eyes slightly. If nothing else, Katakuri is likely to be his opponent. When everyone was looking at the reward order, Nina turned to look at Fujitora and said, "Do you need help?" Fujitora's eyes can't see, but there are many ways to solve it on this ship. Just read the information of Xing for a little while, please sir. Fujitora was slightly apologetic to Nina. Nina smiled indifferently, and did not intend to ask Fujitoran. Iori Aoto had talked to her about this matter. Unless Fujitora mentioned it himself, there was no need to ask. What's up with the cloak? Seeing Nina walking towards Fujitora, Iori asked Nina. The Navy, all officers above the lieutenant level have a corresponding cloak of justice, and the Zero under the world government also has a special white cloak. Compared with the Navy and the world government, the pirates are a lot more chaotic. No matter what. Which of the 4 emperors' pirates does not have a common image, and neither does the 8 gods' pirates so far. However, Yagami Kanto still thinks it's better. Clothes, hat, cloak, etc. The cloak was finally chosen. Of the cloak is determined to be black, which is acceptable to all. Cloak is a coat that is draped over the outside, while the cloak is a piece of cloth that wraps the entire body. It is relatively simpler, and Shiryu of Rain and others also think it is good. A cloak can be carried around with you. You can wrap it with a single pull, and you can pull it off with a single pull. And just putting it on the outside won't affect the battle. It should be almost there. Nina responded to Yagami Kangdu. It may be delivered at any time. Almost as soon as the voice fell, the sound of a trolley sounded outside the hall, and I saw Sugar sitting on a trolley with his legs crossed, holding a stack of candy in his hand. 2 toys pushed the cart and pushed her and the cart into the hall. Here it is. Yagami Kangdu turned to look at Sugar, and walked to the side of the cart. Inside the cart were folded black cloaks of various sizes, but they looked very delicate. The edge of the cloak is embroidered with a little dark gold, all handcrafted by the best dressers in Fishman Island. 2 toys released the cart and left the hall. Sugar also jumped off the cart. She turned to look at the black cloak in the cart, and couldn't help muttering. It's ugly. The only one who can't accept the black cloak is her. But the minority obeys the majority, resistance is ineffective, and the green color she likes is unacceptable to Yagami Kanto. Yagami Kangdu glanced at Sugar, and tapped her forehead with his finger. I heard it. Ah. Sugar covered his forehead, looking at Yagami Kangdu angrily and aggrieved. It's really ugly. Well, it looks pretty good. Shiryu of the Rain came over with a cigar in his mouth and picked up a black cloak that matched his shape. After shaking it off, I took a look, and I can't say I like it very much, but I am still satisfied. It will be fine. Yagami Kangdu watched Nina put on the black cloak and nodded silently. Nina doesn't fit well with things like black cloaks, and it looks like a mediocre effect. Was 1 Sugar left at the end, and she refused the smallest one. The cape. However, rejection is invalid. Chapter 187. Underworld, the Kings Gather. Although Yagami Kangdu wouldn't let her fight head-on, the cloak still had her share. This cloak is a symbol of official crew members, or officials of the Iori pirates. Like among the giants, only cloaks were made for Helding and Gelds. One is that the giants are too big, making the cloak very troublesome, and the other is that the 2 are more representative of the giant core, and the other is a special cadre of healing fruits. Rhodes and others naturally have no opinion on this, and even have some blood surging. The current cape is only issued for the first time, and there will be more in the future. In their view, this cloak represents the approval of Yagami Soto. In order to get the approval of Yagami Kanto, they will fight harder. Okay. Yagami Kangdu draped the smallest cloak over the protesting Sugar. After looking at it for a while, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sugar, the little loli's head, emerald green hair, coupled with this black cloak, the image is really indescribably funny, no wonder she protested wildly. It's ugly. Shatang walked to the mirror and looked at it, muttering with a small mouth, with an unhappy expression on his face. It's cute. Nina stood behind her and smiled. Her peculiar aesthetic actually thought that the Sugar was very cute now. Sugar can't agree with Nina for the first time. 8 Gods Kangdu laughed for a while, and said, put it away, you don't need to fight head-on, and naturally you don't need to wear it. Leave it alone if you don't like it, but... Speaking of this, Iori Kangdu paused and said seriously, "Don't lose it to me. If you lose it, you can just wait for it to be cleaned up." When he heard that he didn't have to wear such an ugly thing, Sugar's little head nodded like a rattle. Then it's time to go. 8God Kangdu's expression returned to calm, and there was a trace of stillness in the calm, and said, "Let's go to 10,000 Kingdoms domain. ... Cake Island. This is the core of the realm of nations, the stronghold of thieves." At this time, Cake Island was extremely lively, and there was a cheerful atmosphere everywhere. Soul fruit can extract soul. Therefore, many things on this island are living beings, such as flowers and trees, even rivers and soil. These things are also called homets. A guest from the underground world arrived at Cake Island, and under the guidance of Hormes and the thieves, they headed to the Cake Castle in the center. Below the Cake Castle, it is lively here. Full of laughter and laughter everywhere. It doesn't look like the territory of the four emperors, but rather like coming to a fairy tale world. Just then, a carriage stopped in front of the castle, and a crowd of people got out of the carriage. The first to walk down was a fat middle-aged man wearing small round glasses and a green velvet coat. There was a scar on his face, a cigar in his mouth, and he walked slowly. It's Duffield. A resident of the nearby Cake Island. Someone recognized his identity, was slightly shocked. Is he also on the invitation list? It is said that 30% of the loan sharks in the underground world are related to him. Following Feld was a man with a black mane and beard in a captain's cap and a captain's coat. He folded his hands on his chest and stepped out of the carriage. It's the Sea King Umit. As expected, he was invited again. Umit is one of the emperors of the underground world who has only gained fame in recent years. He has been here once before, and this time is the second time. Although in the underground world, there are many people who have a headache for the tea party. But in the same way, this tea party is also one of the symbols of status. It has something to do with thieves, and the status must reach a certain level to be eligible to receive the invitation letter for the tea party. Not everyone can come. This so-called tea party, although it was made out of interest on the surface, was also an opportunity for many underground world emperors to communicate with each other. It's like a gathering attended by the top nobles of the earthly world. Ah, is this the legendary Cake Castle? Another famous figure in the underground world stepped out of the carriage, holding a bottle of wine in his hand, looking at the huge Cake Castle, showing a hint of amazement. It's Lord Kipperson. Someone recognized his identity and couldn't help taking a breath. This controls a wide range of economies and transactions in the underground world, second only to Doflamingo before. After the fall of Doflamingo, he has gradually taken over all transactions in the underground world. That is, in the past 2 years, he also had a deal with the thief, so he also became one of the invitees to the tea party. But they are all big people. There were some followers of other leaders of the forces. Looking at the big men who got off the carriage, they couldn't help but inhaled and muttered. This is the emperor who reigns in the new world, the tea party. The emperors of the underground world are almost all gathered here. The entrance to the Cake Castle. Because there was still a while before the tea party started, everyone was in no hurry. While admiring the view, stroll towards the Cake Castle. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 188. Uninvited guests, the audience is shocked. You or Umit? If I remember correctly, you should be to land. What's your job? I didn't expect the famous Ocean King to know my name. Trance smiled and said, it's really nice to see you here. In the future, there may be businesses looking for you to take care of, and it's convenient to contact you after leaving a phone call. No problem. Umit's attitude is calm, and the other party is also the emperor of the underground world like him, and there is always something useful for each other. However, it will be discussed in detail as to what the specific situation is. After Trend and Umit communicated, He greeted Morgans, Gibson and others with a smile. Obviously it was not the first time they had met. However, just when his eyes fell on a man in a black cloak at the end of the line, he was slightly startled. He vaguely felt that his face was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who the other party was. At this time, Umid and the others also noticed that Tran's eyes were strange. Looking in Tran's direction, all of a sudden he saw that. The figure of the black cloak. Huh. How come there are 6 people? Kipperson rubbed his eyes. If he remembered correctly, it should be 5 people who got off the carriage. Counting this guy in the black cape, it turned into 666. There is one more person inexplicably. This made everyone's heart jump. If the environment of Cake Island is not like a fairy tale kingdom, not like the Devil's Triangle Sea, if it is so eerie, I am afraid that all of them will jump up directly. Looks like it was discovered. The man in the black cloak slowly raised his lowered head, revealing the face underneath. When they saw his appearance completely, everyone present was stunned. Morgans was stunned, and then his face changed dramatically, revealing a touch of shock. You are Shiryu of the Rain. He, who has been following the 8 Gods pirates, naturally recognized the identity of Shiryu of the Rain in an instant, and his heart suddenly fluctuated like a stormy sea. This is Cake Island. The cadres of the Iori pirates actually appeared in this, Shiryu of the Rain. The Iori Sea. When the few people next to him heard the words, they all took a deep breath. Even if they are in the underground world, in front of the name of the 8 Gods pirates, they are still terrified. The people of the Yagami pirates will come to participate in the Tea Party Arabian Nights. At this time, the members of the nearby pirates also discovered Shiryu of the Rain. Under the drastic changes in their faces, they shouted loudly. Gibson and the others realized that something was wrong and retreated to the rear. This is a matter between the 5 emperors. Even if they are the emperors of the underground world, they have absolutely no capital to intervene. Shiryu of the Rain, how did you come here? Baron Dandin, who was stationed under the Cake Castle, rushed over and spoke to Shiryu of the Rain with a stern expression. Shiryu of the Rain is definitely not on the invite list for the tea party. He knows this very well. It's a long story if you ask me how I got here. Shiryu of Rain responded with a chuckle. Baron Eggy's face became cold and he said, Mom has always wanted to trouble you, but I didn't expect you to come to the door on your own initiative. Since the Yagami pirates went to Elbaf once, the tolerance level for this matter has reached its limit. Troubling us. Shiryu of Rain was slightly surprised and said, we just want to attend the tea party today, but we don't have an invitation letter, so I don't know if we can go in. When Baron Eggy heard Shiryu of Rain's words, his brows were slightly wrinkled, and he very keenly caught the special words in Shiryu of Rain's mouth. Who else are you here? While he spoke sharply, he showed unprecedented vigilance and looked around. And almost at the moment when Baron Eggy's voice fell from the small carriage, members walked out one after another. Combatant of the 8 Gods pirates, Smile. Fujitora walked out from the back of the carriage, leaning on a wooden staff and also wrapped in a black cloak. Step by step, he came to the arena and spoke in a calm tone. Giant Legion, Helding. Under the shroud of blue steam, Helding's figure appeared in the field like a teleportation, and the huge body was wrapped in the same black cloak. Finally, in the center of the crowd, one person simply stepped out. The captain of the Yagami pirates, Yagami Kingta. There was silence. Only the rustling of the wind blowing. Who had a stern face before, was already sweating coldly on his forehead when Shiryu of the Rain appeared, and the calmness in his eyes no longer existed. As for Gibson, Morgans, and the others, their hearts were rolling like a storm, and there was even a hint of shock in their eyes. Yagami Kangdu and the others did not deliberately show any breath. But at this moment, the all-black cloak was like a god of death, suffocating countless people. The 8 Gods Pirates. See above. Chapter 189, Liquidation, Old Grudges. In silence. Can you give it a little bit? Yagami Kangdu, wearing a black cloak, walked towards the cake castle, speaking calmly to Baron Dandan who was blocking the front. Was a cold sweat on Baron Eggy's forehead, and he only felt that it was a little difficult to breathe. As a thief's cadre, he is very aware of the strength gap between emperors like Yagami Kangdu. Between himself and Yagami Soto, it can be said that the gap between heaven and earth. Creep, creep. Fujitora is wearing the same clogs, following behind Yagami Soto. Silence of the audience, only the sound of clogs stepping on the ground slowly spread. Baron Dandan's body was stiff and he didn't dare to stop him. He watched Iori Kingta walk towards the cake castle. All the thieves' members also all froze in place. Although they all had weapons in their hands, no one dared to step forward, and their backs were wet with cold sweat. 2. Something big. Including Morgan's and the others, their hearts were beating violently, as if they were about to jump out of their throats. Watching Iori Kingta and the others wearing a black cloak, they walked into the cake castle one after another. Until Yagami Kangdu and the others all disappeared behind the door of the cake castle, the oppressive aura that was like the collapse of a mountain gradually calmed down. Why did the 8 gods pirates come here? On Gibson's forehead, and the slight drunkenness had already completely sobered up. Durand next to him murmured nervously, "Is it here to talk about business? But it doesn't look like it. No matter what they're going to do." Morgans got rid of the depressed atmosphere, and while he was nervous, a flash of unprecedented excitement flashed in his eyes, and said, "It will become unprecedented. Big news. Inside Cake Castle. No matter what the thief does, or an ordinary member, when they saw Yagami Kangdu and his party wearing a black cloak, they were all terrified, and no one dared to step forward to stop them. As for the gates and stairs that were infused with their souls, they were completely unable to resist the pressure brought by Yagami Kangdu. A group of people walked to the top of the Cake Castle. At this moment, on the top floor of Cake Castle, Lot Lingling, and generals such as Katakori have long known what happened below. Sky was covered with dark clouds at some point, and it seemed that a storm was about to happen. "Open the door." Coming to the top floor of the Cake Castle, Yagami Kangdu said indifferently to the face on the door. A terrifying domineering arrogance made that face show fear, and the door opened with a creak. Behind the gate, there are a lot of tables and chairs. Numerous desserts are placed everywhere. This is the open-air hall on the top floor of the Cake Castle, and it is also the place for the tea party. As the door opened, there was no joyous atmosphere in this open-air tea party. Instead, it seemed to sink into a thick fog, a depression. "I didn't expect you to come to my tea party." In the very center, surrounded by countless people. Looking at the 8 gods Kangdu and the others, a smile appeared on his face, and he said, "This is really full of brilliance." 8 gods Kangdu. Beside and behind, put Star Katakori, Smoothie, Cricket and Snug in the nearest 444 positions respectively. To the left are the Charlotte family's eldest son Pelisparrow, 4th son Owen, Ice Cream Minister, Cheese Minister, etc. Heavyweights. On the right, there are the Charlotte family's eldest daughter, Combert, the 3rd son, Daifuku, the Butter Minister, and the Nut Minister, who all have a reward of more than 300 million. There is no confusion. One of the 5 emperors, they could not see any panic on their faces. Some are just solemn, and the stations on the entire top floor appear to be in order. "I'm sorry I didn't invite you to come here without informing you." Yagami Kangdu took another 2 steps forward, just in front of a table. He picked up a piece of cake on the table for himself and put it in his mouth to taste it. "It tastes good." Looking at Yagami Kangdu's appearance, finally someone couldn't hold back any longer. The eldest son of the Charlotte family, Pelos Puro, looked at Iori Kangdu with a depressed expression, and said sternly, "Iori Kangdu, what are you doing here?" Yagami Kangdu's eyes were light, and he didn't answer his question. But at this time, his eyes shifted from Yashin Kangdu to Hyerding, who was wearing a huge black cloak. His eyes flickered slightly, and he said, "You are Hyerding." I didn't expect you to remember my name. Helding said in a cold tone, having lived in Elbaf for a while. Although he is not a member of the Lamb's family, nor a companion of the time. But they were on the same island, and they were of similar age at the time, so they knew each other. It is precisely because of his understanding that when the town was destroyed and Yorulu, the giant hero, was killed, he would take it to the bone. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 190, Shock the Audience, in the Name of Helding. Well. It brought back some bad memories. Looking at Hyrding, the memory of Elbaf flashed in his mind, and said, "So, do you represent the attitude of your giant clan now?" "No." Hyrding said coldly. "I am now a soldier of the 8 gods pirates, but Elbaf's attitude is the same, and I will never forgive you for the sins you once committed." Didn't show any anger, but instead laughed. She turned to look at Yagami Kangdu, and said, "So you guys are here to smash the game today." Although it was said with a smile, the second half of the sentence revealed a chill that made people shudder. Although there is no domineering arrogance, the 4 emperors themselves are enough to make ordinary people lose consciousness. "Yeah." Yagami Kangdu nodded and replied calmly. Hearing Yagami Kangdu's understated response, those who were leaning on the periphery. The guests who received the invitation were not members of the pirates, and their foreheads were all sweaty. He swallowed his saliva and stepped back subconsciously. From that sentence, to Yagami Kangdu's simple response, they knew what was going to happen next. Battle of the Emperor. The big showdown between the 8 gods pirates and the thieves. I just came to the tea party, but I was involved in the Battle of the Emperor. Everyone was so sad that they wanted to die. There is a lot of fun down there. Someone murmured. Mouth twitched slightly, with cold sweat on his forehead, and said, "Are you sure you're watching the fun, not dying here? This is an imperial battle. Even if they are the leaders of the major forces in the dark world, they are all well-known existences. But in this level of collision, it is like a small boat in a violent storm, which may capsize at any time. How can I have the time to watch the fun?" "Very good. It seems that Kaido guy hasn't let you down yet." Eyes, and a palpitating aura rose from her body and swept in all directions. Almost at the next moment, she suddenly reached out and grabbed the clouds floating above her head. Let it instantly turn into a pitch-black thundercloud, and the thunder light crackles. "Don't think that if you beat Kaido, you can win me." Thunder. With an angry shout, she slammed her right hand towards Yagami Kanto and others in front of her. A terrifying thunder and lightning attacked from head to toe. Purple lightning surged in the field, instantly covering a range of hundreds of meters. The sky caused the flashing of thunder. The power of one blow. Thunder. This is the 4 emperors. No, the power of the 5 emperors. There is the leader of the dark underground world, huddled in the corner, watching this scene. I just felt a shudder in my heart, and I couldn't help muttering. However, almost at the moment when the purple lightning gradually contracted and was about to dissipate from the void, a dazzling white shock wave roared away. The terrifying day tiger spread purple lightning almost instantly. The mighty force invaded in all directions, and even poured directly into the dark clouds in the sky. See it from a distance. It's like a white light runs through the sky. How can Mom's thunder was actually swallowed up? The little pirate leader under the thief's command, looking at this scene, couldn't help showing a bit of shock and disbelief. Is this kind of thing considered thunder? Hyrding's body was shrouded in red steam, and looking at this moment from a distance, he was able to open the 8-door Dun armor formation in a short period of time without injury. Power broke out in an all-round way, not even inferior to the strength of a general, and even more so than a general like Katakuri. He raised his huge left hand and slammed it towards the sky. Let's learn about the real thunder. God's wrath. Thunder net. With Helding's roar that shook all directions, the dark cloudy sky in between turned into a sea of thunder. And almost in the next instant, the thunder in the sky was like a violent storm, and it bombarded the cake castle. Another, the thunder was as thick as a water column, shocking the mind. The Eight Gods Pirates. Special Officer Helding. The leader of the dark forces curled up in the corner spoke with a horrified expression. The person next to him looked at the sky thundering thunder, and his face was a little pale, and said, "How is it possible, obviously not a devil fruit person, can actually attract the animation sky thunder and lightning? Naturally, it is the thunder fruit. One of the most invincible fruit abilities. According to rumors, only a few such as the natural disaster fruit can be juxtaposed with it. The power of Hyrding's detonation at this moment makes people even doubt whether he devoured the thunder fruit. However, the four emperors have a special intelligence network and know that he is the owner of the Sky Island, the fruit of Anilu." Chapter 191. The Star. Thousands of hands. Crackers. Boom. Under the gaze of countless people, either shocked or horrified, the thunder and bombardment fell from the sky. In an instant, the upper part of the cake castle was filled with scorched smoke, and thunder arcs exploded everywhere. The attack was concentrated on the cadres in and around them, but there were occasional uncontrolled thunderstorms that fell to the edge. For a time, the top floor of the entire cake castle turned into a sea of thunder. When the arc of thunder dissipated, the surviving people looked at the core shrouded in thunder with a stunned gaze. There, the thieves were not wiped out by this blow. Countless identical giants appeared out of nowhere, holding up biscuit shields and connecting them together. The biscuit shields were black and scorched, but they blocked the thunder and did not affect the many thieves below. The thief, "Put the star cracker up." A surviving person called out the identity of the other party with a slightly trembling voice. The third of the four generals, "A 1,000-handed cracker. A bounty of 860 million 8 Baileys. Its brother cracker. Saved." Many of the thieves were also frightened into a cold sweat, and they could not help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw that Cracker used the biscuit soldiers to block Wanley's attack. The body of the cracker, hidden in a biscuit soldier, looked up at Helding, who was covered in thunder, and said with a slightly sinister tone, "The thunder that can swallow mother, I don't know what kind of ability you have. But with this ability alone, I'm not qualified to shout. Hyrding has long cultivated a sense of domineering, even the strength is second only to Iori Soto and Fujitora. And location of the cradle has naturally been captured. About Thief General Star before he came. Will you be a star? Have you qualified? Just come to verify and try." Helding opened his mouth coldly, raising his hand and pressing out of the void. A terrifying shock wave erupted, roaring at the body of the cradle, and rushed away. Cracker didn't expect Helding to arrive at his body in an instant, and his expression changed. The armed color is domineering, and he controls the biscuit to block the shock wave of the tiger. Boom! The day tiger bombarded the biscuit shield and burst open. Terrifying power, abruptly armed and domineering. The crackling of the biscuit shield shattered, and the shell of the biscuit soldier was cracked and shattered. Cracker was forced to swing his sword to resist, blocking the shock wave. Seeing Hyrding and Keligia get started, Shilyu of the Rain snorted softly with a cigar in his mouth, and said, "The nonsense is over, and it's time to start." Ohm! A cold glow flashed in his eyes, and he held the second-generation Goosh sword hilt at his waist. Suddenly, the second-generation ghost was pulled out, a terrifying scorching sword energy, slashed towards the front. Flame sword flow, aye. This sword chi waved, not only cut the ground and the table and chairs open, but also contained an amazing hot force. Everything he went to was completely burned and destroyed. Seeing the power of this blow, Pelisparrow, Owen and the others all changed their expressions, showing extremely solemn expressions. Iori Pirates, Shiryu of the Rain. The power of this sword, even though it is a long-range attack, is still extremely terrifying. In their perception of seeing, hearing, and color, if they go up and block it, even if they can block it, they are bound to be injured. With that scorching sword energy, everything it went to was cut open and burned. When it came to the front, the ground suddenly wriggled strangely. Gollum, What was originally a solid castle ground suddenly turned into something like rice cakes. It condensed into a huge box-shaped fist in the void, and the fist was attached with the domineering purple armed color. Fantastic power, rice cakes. Boom! That box-shaped fist was bombarded with the scorching sword energy. The entire fist was covered by flames in an instant, and a crack was cut abruptly in the center of the fist, but it also forcibly shattered Shiryu of the Rain's sword energy. The broken sword energy splattered in all directions. Wherever he goes, he burns and destroys all pastries and drinks. Shiryu of the Rain watched this scene and placed the blade in front of him. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at a figure standing behind the square fist. It's a little tricky. Who blocked his attack is naturally self-evident. Superman is a person with the ability of Nuo Nuo fruit. The fruit is awakened, and the head of the 4 generals of thieves. Katakuri. A bounty of 1,057,000,005 Baileys. King to king. I won't let you near my mother. Katakuri looked at Shiryu of the Rain with deep eyes, without any surprise from beginning to end. His arrogance have long been open, and all the future so far has been seen by him in advance. Shiryu of the Rain grinned, showing a dangerous expression. Is it? He lifted his foot, and the ground cracked instantly, displaying the 6th style shave of the Navy. Holding the 2nd generation ghost in his hand, he suddenly rushed straight ahead. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 192, The Old Man is Here, Don't Waste Your Time. The powerful sword chi swept the earth, blowing a strong whirlwind. In the midst of this, a terrifying demonic energy spewed out. Filled in the air, it really makes people have an ominous premonition, not knowing what will happen next. Halding stood on the spot and frowned. Shiryu of the Rain is really fast enough. Sword energy flew straight towards Katakuri. Katakuri is domineering and can predict the short-term future. I had already expected this move, so I was able to dodge it with ease. Sideways flash, the sword energy slid towards the castle behind him. With one knife, the small castle is divided into 2. The other pirates around were vibrating violently, staggering, barely standing still. Even, a part of it has been completely swallowed by the huge crack in the ground, and screams are heard one after another. In the sky, the clouds were densely covered with thunder and lightning, which seemed not to be a good omen. However, this is only for the pirates. Katakuri looked at the sky blankly, which really made him feel very uncomfortable. When I looked up, the surroundings were already full of pirates. Halding, leave this to me. I'll see what's going on with the legendary perfect man. Shiryu of the Rain held the cigar in his mouth and stared straight at Katakuri in front of him. Halding shook his head helplessly. It's obviously my prey, forget it. Since that's the case, then I'll have to go somewhere else to play. Isn't there a lot of enemies? After all, Charlotte Lingling is just that. There are many sons. Katakuri's eyes widened. This sentence made him very unhappy. Although that Halding was already difficult to deal with, but from the aura of the man in front of him, it can be seen that this guy is not a good person. Sure enough, now that all the staff are here, those powerful guys have all come here. Sure enough, all of them are powerful, no wonder they can be unscrupulous here as the Emperor of the Sea. It seems that there are really many sons in the Charlotte family. The Cake Island, all the members of the Charlotte family are here, and they are not afraid of the deadly battle. Charlotte Perospero, as the eldest brother, must play a leading role at this time. Has Brother Katakuri already fought? Smoothie said. Looking around, the island has become a mess, and there are wars everywhere, and Charlotte Lingling is nowhere to be found. It is estimated that she is fighting now. Tell me where my mother is. Perospero said eagerly, with anger between his eyebrows. Since the negotiation fails, the 8 thieves must be wiped out. Not found. Go and support Katakuri. Perospero said. Cricket ran out, and in the castle, everyone else showed up. Fujitora smiled and walked slowly in front of them, closing his eyes and frowning. Gradually relaxed, revealing a peaceful expression. The old man can't let you go over. Then, he pulled out the knife behind him, inserted it on the ground, and stared at the 3-3 in front of him. He can easily identify the enemy's location and his strength through the breath of the enemy. This is more accurate than seeing the arrogance. Smelly old man. Cracker sneered and scolded angrily. Fujitora smiled, just a blind man. But the pressure it brings to him is no less than that of a Navy admiral. Character of this level, why did he appear here and also fight with Yagami Kangdu? Even so, he still felt that something was wrong. Why the admiral could be here? If the old man is here, don't waste your time. Fujitora smiled and said indifferently. A little cold light came from his head. Cracker reacted quickly, holding his own long sword to block this move. Of Fujitora's smile still crossed his face. A blood mark was printed on his face, and the blood slowly slid down his face. The speed is so fast that the cracker is unexpected. Is this guy really blind? Hey, old thing. Cracker is getting a little impatient. The other brothers on the side. They all rushed towards Fujitora. Don't think you're blind and I'll show mercy. Cricket frowned. Just behind him, Smoothie jumped up, his long sword straight to Fujitora's forehead. Ping. A crisp sound. Sky, a familiar figure passed by. Helding came. Armed domineering surrounded his arm, blocking the long sword of armed domineering. Smoothie frowned. Thanks to you for coming in time. Fujitora smiled and threw it sharply, and the cracker took 2 steps back. Humph, I'll deal with this woman. Until now, Helding was still upset that Shiryu of the Rain had strengthened his opponent. Bang, bang, the sound of the artillery fire never stopped. The other residents on Cake Island fled everywhere, and the pirates were completely frightened. Chapter 193, King to King, General. Juice toxins. Smoothie stepped back, wringing his arms completely dry. Using the juice toxin sprayed from the fingers, it can corrode everything around it. 3 Helding subconsciously used his armed color to resist, but it seemed to be of no use. The juice toxin immediately soaked into his arm, and the pain has gradually come. I underestimate you. Helding stopped. Humph, don't think that armed arrogance can block my poison, this is more powerful than bullets. Smoothie sneered, how could it be possible to give the opponent a chance to breathe now? Between the words, Smoothie had already rushed in front of Helding. Punched down and hit Helding right on the body. Helding was half kneeling on the ground, sweat running down his cheeks. I look down on you. As a 3-star general, I won't be able to win. A nobody can win. I'm going to squeeze you into juice for my mother to enjoy. The toxin fell on the ground, and white steam came out, and even the ground was corroded. As this, the juice toxin of the smoots. The little pirates in the back were amazed. Daifuku, Owen and the others behind him sneered. They heard about the reputation of the 8 Gods pirates for a long time, but today's words are not true. 3rd brother, 4th brother, you lost money to find your mother. Owen and Daifuku nodded and left immediately. Helding got up slowly and stood in front of Smoothie. Looked at his arm, which was already red, and even started to foam. This kind of pain is not something ordinary people can imagine. Smoothie looked at a pirate behind him and grabbed him directly, wringing out all the water on him abruptly to replenish himself. The mummy fell to the ground without even making a sound. Although this toxin can't enter your internal organs, it is very easy to burn your skin and make you miserable. Now I think you've felt it. Smoothie sneered, and the long sword rushed towards his face. Chapter 194. Bakery Knight Helding was expressionless, seeing that the sharp blade immediately came to him. The sword chi had already arrived. 8 gates of Dunjia Shungmin. Open. Bang. There was a loud noise, and the strong anger caused huge fluctuations, and the smoothie flew out, the long sword was inserted on the ground, and the man fell to the ground. suddenly got up and picked up the long sword and was about to rush over, but the whole person was stunned. This guy's body seems to have changed strangely, and the green steam on his body has completely surrounded himself. Why haven't you been poisoned by me? Smoothie was a little flustered, but didn't fully express it. Hireding sneered, because the 8 gates of Dunji are opened, the sweat on the body will be secreted and evaporated to dryness, and there will be green steam. Your skin toxins have already been secreted, how can you hurt me with your little tricks? Instant, Helding appeared behind Smoothie. The bang hit Smoothie on the back, and the domineering look blocked this move. Smoothie turned around sharply, slashed down with a sword, and cut off the house behind Helding. A block of houses was cut off in the middle and collapsed instantly, but Hireding was not hit at all. Humph, I'll have a good time with you for a while. Helding looked at the collapsed house area behind him, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. The old man doesn't allow anyone to go there. Behind him, Captain Yagami Soto is over there. Since it has been decided that one person will fight against Charlotte Lingling, Fujitora, who is a crew member, cannot let anyone disturb his captain's battle. Old thing, go away. Crackers don't care so much. Holding the long sword, Fujitora held the sword vertically in front of him, and saw the flaw of the sword. Gravity Knife Tiger. Using II's slash after taking the knife, he aimed at the neutral position of this vertical slash, and blocked the slash. Cracker was stunned, his body seemed to be getting heavier and heavier, and his face was not right. Devil Fruit Ability. A loud bang, a big hole sunk under his feet, and he was completely embedded in it. Cookie Writer. A quick swipe, the biscuits fell to the ground. Instant, a row of cookie knights was displayed in front of Fujitora. Right now, the giant cookie knights wield the long swords in their hands. More than a dozen sword chi tore the ground, forming huge cracks that swept towards Fujitora. Fujitora retreated a few steps back subconsciously, barely dodging this move, and the gravity of the cradle disappeared. Taking this opportunity, he jumped up and just clapped his hands, and the huge biscuit floating in the sky fell like a boulder. Mighty Slash. Fujitora jumped behind and vigorously swung the dagger in his hand. The huge sword aura was mixed with a powerful murderous aura, almost distorting the surrounding space. The huge biscuit in the sky was instantly chopped into pieces and fell to the ground with a loud noise. And only now did he realize that he was surrounded by these gigantic biscuit knights. A dozen biscuit knights, holding shields and long swords, surrounded Fujitora. Daifuku and Owen have come here later. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 194. The game, it's over. It's alright, Cracker. The 2 of them looked at the Cracker, covered in sweat, with embarrassing writing on their faces, and they must have suffered a lot from the old man. Is this guy so strong? Instant, the cookie knights attacked together. Pretzel. How could Cracker be convinced that he couldn't be defeated by an old man if he said anything? The long sword formed a spiral wave of sword energy, stabbing towards Fujitora's side. Fujitora held the sword to resist, and the spiral sword chi struggled to wrap Fujitora's blade. Fortunately, it has the domineering support of the armed color, otherwise this knife will definitely be broken into pieces. Sparks flew everywhere, and there was smoke and dust all around. Fujitora frowned, struggling to dissolve the powerful sword energy. As the fluctuations in the air became larger and larger, the sword energy slowly disappeared. Fujitora breathed a sigh of relief and was preparing to launch the next attack. Unexpectedly, Owen suddenly attacked behind him. The first thing that came was fist style. Fortunately, Fujitora responded quickly and avoided the fist style. The powerful fist style smashed the biscuit knight standing at the front. Hey, be careful, that's my cookie writer. Cracker shouted angrily. It doesn't matter that you can make the old guy in front of you. Daifuku also took the opportunity to act. He flew a punch and charged towards Fujitora, and a huge axe directly knocked down Daifuku. A loud bang, Dafu fell to the ground, the axe beside him. Fortunately, he blocked this move with the use of armed arrogance, otherwise he would definitely die. The shock still made me feel extremely painful. Slowly stood up, looked up, and saw a giant female standing in front of him. He picked up the giant axe and slashed again, and Daifuku avoided it. Giant axe hit the ground, forming a huge crack around the house, and all the pirates fell into it. Tiles all over the place, the land rises. Sand was filled with dust, and it was almost impossible to see the people around him, and Kelijia panicked to find Daifuku. Owen stopped, ran to Daifuku's side, and looked again. The smoke gradually disappeared. I saw a huge female axe standing by Fujitora's side. "It's okay, Fujitora, are you hurt? Your Excellency is worried, the old man is safe." Fujitora patted the dust on his body. "Let them see the power of the 8 regiments." Jeers said excitedly that it had not been such a happy fight for a long time. Fujitora nodded. "Then you can be so mad. On our turf. Cookie night, double roll pretzel." A dozen biscuit knights surrounded them, and the air was completely distorted. Looking at it, more than 24 vortex swords have distorted everything around, and almost completely tore the side of Fujitora and Jeers. Gravity chopping earth pit. Fujitora exerted a gravity effect on himself and Gelds, and the crater formed on the ground had caught them underground. Front of him, and the power of this move was so great that none of the Cookie Knights who used this skill were spared. The chest was penetrated to form a hole, and they fell to the ground, and the 2 jumped out and stood there. 3 generals will let this old man deal with it, you can just hold on to the other 2. Gals nodded, then rushed over. Fujitora was silent and did not speak. But invisibly, the surroundings were all filled with murderous aura emanating from him. This time, she was angry. "There are as many Cookie Knights as you want." Clapped his hands, and Cookie Knights surrounded him. "The old man is here to take your life." Fujitora frowned, the surrounding air seemed very dignified, and the storm in the sky was getting stronger and stronger. Crackers were arrogant at the beginning, and gradually became serious. He knew that the old guy in front of him would definitely not be as simple as he imagined. Just judging from the ability of the gravity fruit, it is known that it is by no means an ordinary person. "The game is enough, and then let the old man come to meet you." Fujitora sneered, and instantly disappeared in front of Cracker's eyes. Cracker turned back in panic, only to find that he was not behind him. He raised his head sharply, and in an instant, all the Biscuit Knights rushed towards the top of his head. This magnificent sword chi has already slashed a sword chi towards the top of his head. Cricket barely escaped, but the sword chi left a huge scar on the ground. The crack was spreading everywhere, and the surrounding ground was shaking, and it almost affected other people who were fighting. Especially Owen and Daifuku in the back. "What's the matter?" Still there, Gal's attack was resisted with all his strength, and he didn't have time to pay attention to this side. But this powerful vibration made him have to pay attention to the blind old man at that moment. Now is not the time to pay attention to others. The giant axe slammed towards Dafu's side frantically, and the huge impact formed was difficult for them to resist. And now, because of his distraction, there is no way to continue to dodge, so he has to carry it hard. There is a loud bang, and a strong impact will be formed across the body. The impact shattered the ground to form a huge deep pit. Everything around was silent, and the smoke was rising again. But by seeing domineering, you can perceive the location of the enemy. Chapter 195, Disadvantage, Big Mom Pirate Crisis. Fire Fist is steaming hot. How could Owen give Guy's son another chance to do it again? The high temperature on his body was already ready to move. The steam was mixed with dust and filled the entire Cake Island in this area. The huge fireball formed by the huge flame in the sky slammed down towards the giant Jeers. Just like a shooting star. Gels, who was standing on the ground, stared at the huge fireball formed by the raging fire in the sky, and sneered as he swung his axe. Just like playing baseball, he hit the huge fireball back again. A bang, the fireball exploded in the sky. Thick black smoke formed, enveloping the sky above. And Owen was actually hit by the one move that he used, and fell to the ground. Home run. Pretzel. Double slash. The huge Cookie Knight has already surrounded Fujitora, and will never give him any chance to make a move. Formed a huge sword energy spirally, thrusting towards Tanghu's side. And the fluctuation of this sword energy is so great that it has even driven the surrounding airflow to form a strong tornado. I see how you're going to escape this time. Who said to run? Gravity slash ring IHE tiger slash. In the face of such a powerful impact, Fujitora still did not choose to escape, but drew his sword and carried it hard. The moment the dozen or so sword chi touched Fujitora's move, the instant spread was completely defeated. In an instant, all the sword energy dissipated. Using the surrounding airflow, the rapid rotation formed a ring of powerful sword energy similar to the fierce claws of a tiger, mixed with the ability of its own gravity fruit. Because those Biscuit Knights were squeezed so strongly that they were completely shattered, and they no longer had the ability to continue fighting. Cricket was stunned. He couldn't believe that the Biscuit Knight he was proud of was so vulnerable in front of the blind old man named Fujitora. Hateful. They gritted their teeth in anger. Immediately, he was about to clap his hands and continue to summon more taxis, but how could Fujitora give him such a chance? Be careful. Just when Cracker reacted again, the barnacle had already drawn a knife at him in front of him. Gravity slashes tiger hunt. Knife went down, the armor on the chest of Keligia was cut into 2 pieces. Blood spurted out from the scar, splashing everywhere. Cracker rolled his eyes and slowly fell to the ground, followed by a huge gravity that made him unbearable. He can't even stand up now, and it may be impossible to even make a move. The accompanying loud noise and the powerful crack formed have completely subdued it, and it will no longer have the ability to continue to stand up. Cricket. Daifuku shouted Cracker's name out loud. The enemy on his side is also quite powerful, and he doesn't know what kind of moves he uses to inflict heavy damage on Gears, and his wounds can always heal very quickly. Shoot a man first, shoot a horse, capture a thief first, capture the king, and if you kill you, the Cookie Knight will naturally break 5, and you will be successful. That fell to the ground. Fujitora sneered, and then put the knife into the scabbard. Axe blast. Gertz swung the giant hammer in his hand. Among the cracks that were split hard, the doped boulders protruded and bulged. Among the huge cracks of 50 or 60 meters, the boulders have been woven into cracks, causing the cracks to get bigger and bigger. After retreating as far back as possible to avoid this move, they were ready to counterattack again. Seeing that Cracker was about to be killed by Fujitora with a smile, they had no way to go to support. The old man won't kill him. But even so, Daifuku and Owen have yet to show their true strength. Therefore, it is best to solve the battle as soon as possible, presumably now that the cradle is no longer available, the ability to continue fighting, the fruit of gravity, makes it even unable to get up. Even now, Gals can have a part of the upper hand so far, but if you really have to face the 2 full-fledged Daifuku and Owen, they may not be able to stand on the sweet spot. Is this only the strength? Compared with Kaido, you are too far behind. Gertz sneered. Devil Hunter. Daifuku rubbed his body, and then a lantern man descended from the sky. The devil is like a lamp god, holding a huge long sword and slashing towards the top of Gears' head. Gels resisted with an axe, but never thought that the power of the giant demon was so strong. He even made his own half kneeling on the ground. The old man is here to help. Take a rest. A young child's voice came from behind, and Fujitora turned his head. You can tell it just by listening to the sound. Sugar also joins the fight. And standing behind the Sugar, there is Nina. Perospero also looked for traces of his mother everywhere, but never found any news. So anxious, he finally decided to find it himself. And now, I found out that Owen and Daifuku were facing a formidable opponent. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 196. Strong Enemy, Katakori's Determination. I didn't expect you to come so soon. How's it going? Fujitora turned his head and asked. Don't worry, they are the only ones left. Chapter 196. Capture the Cake Island. Forgetting the sound of shells and explosions around, Katakori stood there and walked without saying a word. There is no winner yet, and this battle will never end. Shiryu of the Rain jumped up, waving the famous sword in his hand. Leiyu's murderous aura became more and more serious. 4. Blood, and the huge dark power it hides, makes Shiryu of the Rain more and more eager to fight the strong. Thunder Cross. 2 crosses. The key device stabbed towards the Katakori on the ground. Katakori can predict the next move very clearly, so it can be easily avoided. It was now that he seemed to pay too much attention to these 2 sword chi, but he forgot Shiryu of the Rain. I turned around suddenly, only to find that this guy suddenly appeared behind me. Offense is the best defense. Katakori stands firm and ready to fight back. Willow Cake. Looking at the opportunity, Katakori jumped up, with a domineering armed look on his legs. Then it began to split in all directions, forming a dozen legs that were quickly launched and shot towards Shiryu of the Rain. Among the dozen or so legs has been urgently inserted into the ground. The ground was hit by a dozen huge snares formed by stepping into the air, and it was even about to completely surround Shiryu of the Rain, and Shiryu of the Rain used his own weapons to resist. The powerful impact formed made him feel that it was too difficult to resist. But even if you take it hard, you must definitely kill it. A struggle, the 2 took a dozen steps back. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Shiryu of the Rain charges forward again. Waving the famous sword in his hands with both hands, Leiyu's strenuous Zanshu mixed with the sword energy of thunder and lightning, tearing everything around him. Now there is nothing to destroy by oneself, especially the strong murderous desire for the man in front of him must be satisfied. Otherwise, the killing will never stop. Nice cake thorns. Katakori picked up the inserted trident, and his body had completely turned waxy. After while severely surrounded the trident, he formed a new huge thorn-pointed rice cake with his own arms. I have to settle with you today. After speaking, Trident Nuo, which was as powerful as thunder, aimed at Shiryu of the Rain and shot it. Everything around it seemed to be torn apart. 8-door Dunjia, startled, open. The huge impact force formed by the blue steam surrounding Shiryu's body directly shot out all the Katakori. Katakori frowned, and the fierce light in his eyes was enough to obliterate everything around him. But at this time, the more powerful enemy in front of him gave him a headache. This perfect man faced such a powerful opponent for the first time. Cut. Because he was filled with unbearable pain, Shiryu of the Rain would never open the 8 gates of Dunjia casually. The man in front of him was so strong that he felt a little tricky, so he had to do it. Day Tiger Breaks 5. The blue steam emanating from Shiryu the Rain now is all formed by the sweat on his body being evaporated to dryness. At this moment, Shiryu of the Rain burst into blue veins and almost lost his consciousness. Just answering gently, the sword energy alone can destroy the surrounding houses. And the powerful sword chi formed at this moment was only formed by the airflow, but Katakori couldn't resist it at all. Because he knew very well that once he was hit by this trick, his body would be shattered. Shiryu of the Rain was so fast that he had no way to escape. Baked rice cakes. Katakori prepares to fight to the death. Because this man really let himself experience the pleasure brought by real battles. Using the glutinous fruit to completely turn his arm into a rice cake, compressed in the air, the current Katakori's combat power has skyrocketed. This is comparable to the powerful lethality of a rocket, and at the moment when it touches the Day Tiger Break 5, a huge airflow spherical space is formed in the sky. Domineering fist mixed with armed color, the flame formed by firing rapidly in the air. The moment when it came into contact with the powerful airflow, the burning became more intense. The ground was severely squeezed by the fireball formed by the airflow, and everything around it seemed to be completely swallowed up by the mysterious space like a black hole. A raging fire burned in this area, and the two stood in the flames. Interesting, it's really getting more and more interesting. Shiryu of Rain held the cigar in his mouth and smiled. Throwing the cigar on the ground, now he is facing this opponent seriously. The same is true for Katakuri. The scarf that had been covering his face for a long time was too much of a hindrance. Chapter 197. A mere newcomer, dare to be presumptuous. I should have a good time with you and let you see my true face. A hideous face was placed in front of Shiryu of Rain. Shiryu of Rain was stunned at first, and then calmed down. Sure enough, the monster's subordinates are still monsters. He used to be ridiculed a lot because of this face, and at the moment when his arrogance erupted, no one dared to mock him. There can only be one between you and me. Shiryu of the Rain turned the knife in his hand and looked at Katakuri. Both of them were panting heavily, and the move just now also consumed a lot of their strength. But the battle has only just begun. Don't underestimate my other brothers, Katakuri said. On the other hand, Yagami Soto and Charlotte Lingling are completely different and have not fought yet. Just looking at the disputes within Cake Island, they sneered, and the winner has not yet been decided. Is this what you did? Since you don't plan to live under my account, don't blame me for being rude. Charlotte Lingling sneered, and the battle of the twin emperors was about to break out. What I want to tell you is that now my mind has changed. Because not only do I want Fishman Island, but Cake Island is mine too. Yagami Kang douches the corners of his mouth, slowly raise it upwards. In the smile made Charlotte Lingling feel even more unhappy after seeing it. How dare you say it, bastard! Two of them slashed at each other with weapons in their hands, and the moment the two weapons touched, a huge crack formed in the sky. The rocks formed by the instant explosion of everything around it splashed around, and the flames ignited violently. The howling wind formed a huge tornado that swept all the surrounding creatures. Sky was getting dark, and it was completely dyed with scarlet. The battle of the two kings covered the sky and the sun, like the beginning of chaos. Sky was cut into two pieces, and the earth was torn into a long gap. Bulge and cracks spread wildly around the boulder, and all the creatures around ran away. Two stand in a barren place, and no one is involved. The flames of war pervaded the entire Cake Island, whether it was the Yagami pirates or the other residents of the island. This war is a disaster for all of them. I haven't seen you for a long time, how dare you climb on top of my head? Don't you know what kind of majesty the emperor originally standing at sea has? I don't know, because today you have to put away all your majesty. Between lightning and flint, Yagami Kanto instantly appeared in front of Charlotte Lingling. Charlotte Lingling was holding a large sword, and with just one slash, the ground in front of her was cracked. In the sky, thundercloud Zeus obscured the original light. What are you waiting for? A roar, the dark clouds in the sky gathered and thundered in the dark clouds. The blue light instantly slashed down, and there were wreckage boulders in a radius of several kilometers. When struck by this thunder, it instantly turned into flying smoke. The smoke and dust filled half of the Cake Island, and even the battles of other people were interrupted by it. Twice. A voice came from behind. Zeus thought he had hit him with this move. With the two-footed cap in his hand, Napoleon himself was still in a smug smile. After hearing this sarcasm, he instantly became serious. But Prometheus behind him was already ready to fight. Ready to go, the raging fire separates and burns. At the back, Yagami Kangta, who was preparing for a sneak attack by the driver, stared at the raging fire and backed away. Fortunately he was not hit by the flames. The flames were fierce, and the surrounding area was reduced to ashes. Black smoke filled the air, and it was almost impossible to see the figure in front of him. Charlotte Lingling used her arrogance to sense the movement around her. Kangdu, the 8 gods above his head, opened the 5 doors angrily, and the steam from his body began to erupt wantonly. The huge airflow formed almost dissipated the surrounding black smoke, barely able to see the front clearly, but also able to inflict heavy damage to the manual. Stepped down, and was blocked by Charlotte Lingling, who had a domineering sword with armed aura, and collided violently with the domineering and domineering leg. At the same time, the domineering arrogance of both sides burst out. Black and purple lightning ripped apart the space, and there was a strong vibration around, and everything was in an instant. It's just a newcomer who dares to be presumptuous in front of me. Charlotte Lingling showed all her arrogance. Black and purple lightning tore through the sky, and there was a rustling in the air. Katakuri, who was still fighting, looked at the top of the cake and saw the black and purple lightning. Now, I'm afraid someone has disturbed my mother. The whole island was restless, and all the other inhabitants took part in the battle. The giants who broke into the island also began to sweep the earth everywhere, and they wanted to start a new journey on this island. For the glory of the giants. Has the captain already fought that woman? Since that's the case, I can't drag it like this anymore. Shiryu of the Rain sneered and frowned. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 198. Thunder falls from the sky. Charlotte Lingling is angry. The current Shiryu of the Rain has yet to show his true strength. 8-door Dunjia, every time he opens it, it will be a considerable loss to his body, but now he no longer cares about it. The previous cultivation has already allowed him to bear the load brought by the 7 doors shocking door. It's really interesting. But since it has reached this level, even if you flee the battle, we will never allow it. Katakuri Sen Cold Road. He surrounded his arm with his armament and domineering, and then completely expanded his arm to form a new round of powerful attacks. Cut the rice cake. That chased infinitely, the fists formed by the domineering and domineering armed colors were like cannonballs and even far surpassed cannonballs. Dozens of times the power, the speed of light is generally flying towards Shiryu of the Rain. Shiryu of the Rain can no longer hide his strength now. If he neglects it, the consequences may be unimaginable. He knows very well that the man in front of him is definitely not a simple person. I'm afraid it's not an exaggeration to describe him as a monster. Shiryu of the Rain said to himself. The domineering look of Katakuri burst out completely, and the 2 black and purple lightnings in the Cake Island almost destroyed the entire island. Even the whole island was shaking violently in the middle of the sea. A place in the deep sea that even the Sea Kings dare not approach. Shiryu of the Rain also mixed his own sword with a strong domineering arrogance, trying to block the fatal blow with his fleshly body alone. I am afraid it would be a little difficult. But now is definitely not the time to back down. Black and purple lightning burst out, the surrounding earth was smashed into pieces, and all the overlords were leaking. The waste pit left by the outbreak, the thick smoke in this waste pit blocked everyone's sight. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky shrouded the entire Cake Island, and this is the full power of Zeus. By Prometheus slowly rose to the sky. The entire Cake Island was surrounded by lightning. The thunder and lightning slashed around unscrupulously, and there was no distinction between the enemy, which made Charlotte Lingling's pirates quite a headache. Is Mom angry? Who was lying on the ground unable to get up, stared at the sky. But now, he can't do anything by himself. Stay away from that kid, I've heard of him, none of Doflamingo's men is normal. Owen in the back told Daifuku next to him, and pointed to the sugar in front of him. Who was holding a teddy bear? Once hit by sugar, even if it is yourself, it will definitely be defeated. Even if they are turned into toys, they may not be able to beat us. That's hard to say. Gels sneered and waved the big axe in his hand. This time, I thought it would be quite easy to kill Owen. But it is the strong fruit ability now, and even directly corrodes the huge battle axe. I used the most, and I was proud of, was so vulnerable in the hands of others. Daifuku took this opportunity to move forward. Transpiration burst. Water vapor permeates everywhere, and with the heat of the high-temperature fruit, the surrounding becomes unbearable, and even the skin of others that are slowly being burned. That afflicts the skin makes everyone around feel quite uncomfortable. Painfully cruel. It's a little tricky. Fujitora said. How about the three generals compared to the three disasters? Kaido used to be more arrogant than you, and now the result is still there. Helding sneered. The toxins on his body have no effect on him at all. Smoothie is just a woman, and if she still dares to show off her power in front of her, she will be right. After all, the two sides have different beliefs, and they are now at odds with each other. Humph, I haven't used my true strength yet, how dare you dare to be mad in front of me? Smoothie drew his long sword. The long sword was soaked with juice and dripped onto the ground, and steam ignited on the ground. Is extremely corrosive, and just a drop of water penetrates the ground several meters deep. Although I'm not good at this, I'm afraid you may not be able to crack it. After saying that, Smoothie waved the long sword in his hand, and a sword energy was mixed with the water vapor in the juice, and it swept straight towards Helding. Hireding jumped up, and after dodging the sword energy, he realized that it was just a fake. Up to now, the real move has been waiting for me for a long time. I'll see how you dodge in the air. Smoothie sneered and waved the long knife in his hand. Moonstep. Even Helding, who was in the air, never felt that his moves were tricky. Shave. A bang, Smoothie appeared behind him and slashed down. It's better to keep staring at the back, and barely escaped this trick in time when the armed arrogance came, and the venom did not penetrate into his body. Chapter 199, the show has just begun. 2 somersaults, Helding stood steadily on the ground. Turning back sharply, the blade of the woman's long sword had already stabbed towards him. He sneered again and again, he really didn't give himself any room to fight back. It's kind of interesting, no wonder you can be a 3-star general. Smoothie slashed desperately, Helding evaded desperately. Retreated from each other everywhere, and the long sword could not hurt himself in the slightest. Juice cross-cut. The cross sword is mixed with black and purple juice. Toxins swept the ground, and the entire ground was completely corroded. It's useless. Day Tiger. Opening the 8 doors of Dunjia, the powerful fist style after the 7 doors shocked the door, and even swallowed the toxin juice and was brought back by him. One move, a huge fist wind like a hungry tiger rushing towards food, the white tiger formed, rushing towards Smoji. Swept the surrounding rock, and the rock was even squeezed into this powerful wave. Juice wall. Swinging a sword gently, the juice secreted from his body, forming an elastic barrier that surrounded the entire fist wind, and then the strong rebound even directly bounced the day tiger back. This made Hireding quite surprised, and it was the first time he was able to use his own fruit ability to resist such a powerful blow. Even when he was fighting against Kaido, he had never seen such a magnificent sight. Juice, cyclone bullets. Venom juice is like a bullet, and it is launched like a meteor towards Helding. It has penetrated into the day tiger. Who was running towards him now, had already squeezed too much juice into the entire aura. While corroding the ground, it shot at him strongly. Shave. Barely dodging a trick of the day tiger, the wave moved forward, and even shot on the sea level. Waves were shot with more than 200 high jets of juice, poisoning all the sea kings in the surrounding area. Intense corrosive burning of their skin, bones surfaced after half a day. Other pirates were shocked, standing motionless, trembling with fright, and sweating all over. How could a common man like himself be able to participate in a battle like this? Sure enough, the 3 generals are 3 generals. But because too much water is consumed, Smoothie must be replenished in time. Therefore, now I have to catch the pirates behind me, suck up their water, and mummify their bodies all over the place after half a day. I thought you were strong. Helding was standing behind Smoothie. Smoothie turned his head sharply, but found that there seemed to be another person in the sky. He looked up, he realized that it was still holding himself. How could there be two people? He is a fruit person, but now, he can't control so much. Just as he was about to dodge, Halding kicked Smoothie in the chest. Smoothie was completely kicked to the ground, only to realize that there was no difference between the two. Smoothie stood up slowly, seeing the domineering look and being able to sense the presence of anyone around him very clearly. But now there is only one powerful person here, which means that this person is probably not someone with fruit ability. The 8 Gates Dunjia Formation. It emits red steam as it evaporates its own blood. The second me you see is just an afterimage left over from Too Fast. He was already standing there, the corners of his mouth slowly raised upwards, and he sneered. All, a woman is. A woman, no matter how strong she is, it is still impossible to fight a man. Today both must die. Do you think it will be me? Juice machine gun. Smoothie didn't bother to talk to him so much, the most important thing now is fighting. That was sprayed like Gatling was too strong. The surrounding houses were destroyed by birds and beasts, leaving almost no traces. Even some pirates are not immune. Juice cannonball. Smoothie raised his hands, the moisture on his body and the water vapor around the air all condensed for himself. Countless cannonballs formed by huge water balloons shot towards higher as he stared at him desperately. When the juice falls on the ground, the tiny juice splashed out can become a very powerful killing weapon. Halding frowned, not avoiding this move. His left leg was corroded by juice, and the severe burns made him feel extremely painful. Sure enough, the interval between the two battles is really too short. The old wounds on my body in the last battle have not been fully healed, so I have to participate in a new battle. Even compared with the 3 plagues, Smoothie is probably really a little worse. But now, he can still inflict heavy damage on himself. Don't underestimate women, or you will suffer a lot. Smoothie stuck the long sword on the ground, and now Halding was in front of him, triumphant. And this, in fact, is just the beginning. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 200, Baman Dunjia vs Squeeze Fruit. Smoothie sneered, not sure who has the upper hand now. Fujitora sat on the spot and planned to rest, but the situation in front of him seemed to be a little chaotic. Even Gels, Nina, Sugar, and the others all participated in the battle. It seems that in this battle, there is still no winner or loser, and it hasn't even tasted any sweetness. Sure enough, in addition to 3 generals, there are still many powerful people in the Charlotte family. Daifuku, led by Pelisparrow, and Irving didn't suffer here either. What's more, the demon summoned by the transpiration is also quite tricky. I'm afraid this battle will be stalemate for a long time. Without strategic breakthroughs, there should be no way to defeat the rock-solid team of the Big Mom Pirates. All opponents are those with fruit abilities. It's hard to beat them without Hailu Stone. Fujitora had to take part in the battle. After all, now that the Cracker has been defeated by himself, he can no longer pose any threat. But right now, others are still pretty tricky. Devil Slash. The steam just now made Jeers and the others quite unhappy. The pain of burning the skin makes them extremely painful. Gels is now resisting, ignoring the enemy in front of him. The demon slashed the powerful sword energy horizontally, cutting the house next to it into 2 pieces. The sword chi was pressing towards his body. Seeing that the sword energy was about to cut him off in the middle. At this time, he was caught off guard and had no time to act. Blind old man in front drew his sword, just blocking the sword chi. At this moment, the moment the blade touched the sword energy, the strong fluctuations sent out completely dissipated the surrounding heat. The powerful air wave completely shattered the entire ground behind. A huge deep pit was formed on the ground, and the rock inside the pit broke and the earth fell. Thick smoke billowed, but this was no obstacle for Fujitora at all. In himself, he is a blind man. The demon behind him had already appeared above his head, and everything before was just a space that was exposed to lure him into making a move. Blade was about to touch his neck. A loud bang, a huge fist hit the house in front of it. A loud bang, they were hit more than 10 meters away, and the houses collapsed in rows. The devil stood up slowly, as if he was not hurt. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with him without defeating the fruit ability. Atami Onsen. The high-temperature corroded ground like magma turned the ground into living water like magma. The huge deep pit formed in the front is filled with high-temperature hot water. And this hot water gradually corroded the ground and slowly spread towards this side. Faced with such an offensive, they also felt a little caught off guard, and now they don't know what to do. Gravity slashes tigers. Fujitora shot his sword at his feet, and a huge wave formed. The hot water that spread from the surrounding ground was swept away by the powerful wave. Can no longer continue to converge, and can no longer continue to pose any threat. And because of the gravity fruit, those high-temperature liquids were also crushed by the gravity fruit, and even squeezed into tiny water droplets. Already in a state of complete weightlessness. Can't move any further. This is the effect of the gravity fruit on Fujitora. It's really thanks to Fujitora, otherwise we really don't know what to do. 8 gates are opened. Nina roared, and then the fluctuating airflow in front of her pushed her body, giving her another chance to gain a brief acceleration. He made a forward assault and quickly appeared in front of Owen. Before that, a punch hit him in the face, and the steaming hot water formed after that made him unbearable. Hot. Nature's fruit ability. How can I be afraid of your physical attack? After listening, Nina sneered. Then the armed color rapped his fist with domineering, and the black fist smashed over Owen and was knocked directly to the ground. Played several rolls. After rolling for a distance of more than 10 meters, he fell to the ground with a bang. Her face was flushed red from the beating, and the corners of Nina's mouth slowly lifted upwards. How about this time? Looking at Owen who was knocked to the ground, Sparrow, who was floating in the sky, opened his hands. How could he just stand by and watch? Sugar-coated cannonballs. Huge candy hits the ground, and the sugar liquid formed by the instant melting still has quite powerful lethality, and it can easily form a new shape and shoot forward again. This is quite painful for them. But Nina, who has 8 armors, can dodge this trick very easily. The demon behind took this opportunity to sneak attack but was stopped by Fujitora. But the gravity fruit was useless to him. I am afraid that even so, his body is always incorporeal, and only those who restrain the fruit ability can be completely restrained. Tabret came, holding his baseball bat, only to realize that he was now in a state of anxiety. What's the matter? Daifuku hasn't resolved the battle yet. It will be soon.